You, O Lord, are the end and the beginning. You carry us and you go before. You are the journey and the journey's end. Amen. It was only really a few days ago that I found myself, along with my fellow Trinity pilgrims to the Holy Land, riding in a bus before dawn, making its way out to the hilly desert of outside eastern Jerusalem. We were trekking into the wilderness to spend an hour in silence, taking in the quiet as we waited for the sun to rise. Slowly, the dark, pitch-black dark, gave way to clear shapes and dramatic views of the hills in the distance. And then it happened. Over maybe 10, 12 minutes, our eyes were glued to the eastern horizon as it first glowed, then seemed to light up. And then we watched a flaming ball of fire rising over the craggy landscape and splashing a bright yellow radiance everywhere around us. It felt like a new world emerging, a new day, something coming out of nothingness into a dazzling, bright existence. When we pilgrims talked later that morning about what happened for us there, people kept exclaiming that at that moment when they saw the sun ascend, it seemed utterly clear that there had to be a God behind all this. Out of the nothingness of the dark had come this dazzling world. There must be something behind that mystery. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. Those are the opening words of the whole Bible, that vast collection of 66 books that stands as the foundation of our faith. And those are the first few verses of the great poem that opens the book of Genesis. It's a song of wonder and awe at the generosity of this Creator. The awe we pilgrims felt that morning must have been some faint echo of the amazement that inspired the poet to create this amazing work. And on the poem goes, describing the unfolding creation of the universe over 7 days. "Let there be a dome in the heavens," God declares on the second day. "Let the waters be gathered, and let vegetation and fruit plants be brought forth for the third." And on it goes, calling forth all the living creatures, until on the sixth day, at the climax of it all, God creates humankind. And if you read aloud the full poem, which I hope you'll do when you get home today, you catch its rhythmic pattern. God says, "Let there be light," or plants or animals. God declares that it shall be so, and then it appears, God speaking a word that draws light out of darkness. Then God declares, "It is good." And then we hear, "And it was evening, and it was morning," of the fourth or fifth or sixth day, almost like liturgy, the rhythm of a poem describing this great Creator God at work. Today marks the beginning of Trinity's year-long pilgrimage of exploring the great stories of the Hebrew Scriptures, which we call the Old Testament. In the journey ahead, we'll be seeing that the Bible uses an array of ways to express the truth of God's world. Much of the deepest truth about God comes not so much in precise facts or narratives or histories or analyses, but it comes in the context of poems and stories and biography and metaphor and symbol. The first chapter of Genesis is not trying to tell us how this world came into being. It is not a scientific analysis. It has no interest in the science of creation. It's answering the question, why did the world come into being? Why did God create the universe? What is the purpose behind existence itself? And why would God call human beings to be part of this reality? Are we humans strange accidents living in a tiny planet spinning through space? What was God thinking? We know that this poem was written in a dark time in the history of Israel, when their nation had been conquered by the armies of Babylon and their leaders taken away into captivity. They were surrounded by a culture in which the gods were brutal, where fighting was often the case between the gods themselves, and they regarded human beings as slaves and servants, a terrible place to try to be a human being in an oppressive society. The Babylonian captors knew nothing of the God the Hebrews had encountered in the desert of Sinai so long before, a God of justice and freedom and compassion. So the poets and rabbis of this captive people wanted to make a response to their people in this confusing, bewildering time. They were not asking how questions of science, but they wanted to declare to their people that there could be hope in the midst of a context that seemed to summon only despair. And the best way they knew to do it was to sing a song of the loving God they had met in the wilderness and were convinced behind all of reality itself. A God who created the world out of sheer generosity and who saw the creation of human beings as the crowning achievement of creation. When the chips are down and the world is at its darkest, people want to hold tight to their core convictions. Do you remember the crowds in church after 9/11 or after the marathon bombing? People needed to return to the deepest truths they needed to hold and cling to. In our Year of the Bible journey, we will be asking our own questions of these texts. What does this passage have to say to us living at this particular moment in time and history and in Boston in the 21st century? And also, what does it have to say to us personally? So today, let's ask both of those questions about this great poem. I think we have to acknowledge that there are plenty in our culture these days who don't agree with the basic assertion of the whole Bible, in the beginning, God. They don't buy it, that there is a God who creates and sustains our world and is at work in the cosmos and in our lives. Over the last batch of years, 5, 6, 7 years, there has been a fierce attack on religious faith by a group of people that have come to be called the new atheists. Some of those atheists blast religious intolerance, and in many ways we're fair game there. It's understandable that things can be raised. Others pull out the most childish images of God and mock them. We must stop believing in anything that cannot be verified by science, says Sam Harris in his book, The End of Faith. A perfect summary of scientism, the notion that all reality can be reduced to a set of measurements and experiments and equations. So what then do we do with love, compassion, pity, sacrifice, joy, gratitude, all the things that actually make us human? Are they not real? John Polkinghorne, a mathematical physicist who became an Anglican priest, declares that a scientist could take a beautiful painting, say the Mona Lisa, analyze every scrap of paint, know every compound, every atom, every molecule that is in it, and completely miss the point of the whole work. Our lives, our world contain dimensions deeper, far deeper than what laboratory experiments can measure. Wise thinkers like Harvard scientist Stephen Jay Gould maintain that religion and science have no argument with each other at all. They are what he calls non-overlapping magisteria, belonging in separate worlds that can speak across to each other but that are doing different things. And Albert Einstein famously said, "Religion without science is blind. Science without religion is dead." Francis Collins, who directed the massive Human Genome Project and is now head of the National Institutes of Health, says, "I see no conflict between the Bible and what science tells me about nature. If God chose to use the mechanisms of evolution to create you, who are we to say that wasn't an absolutely elegant plan?" Over the last few decades, though, there have been some tantalizing hints of convergences in these two ways of knowing, religion and science. In a conference this summer, I heard Bostonian Howard Smith, who was the senior astrophysicist at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center of Astrophysics. I heard him spell out the stunning balance of forces that are required in order that life could emerge in this universe. He says if any of those key atomic constants had been slightly different, then the universe would never have emerged into the material reality of galaxies and solar systems, and the continuums that could allow life to be created could not exist. The English physicist Roger Penrose estimated that the odds against a cosmos as suitable as this one to human life to be 1 in 10 to the 300th power, a figure larger than the number of atomic particles believed to exist in the universe. Howard Smith puts our situation this way. Either we are the stunning accidents of billions of years of expanding galaxies and atomic reactions, in which case we are lucky beyond our wildest imagining, or we are here for a purpose, the latest unfolding of a mysterious universe in which we are blessed and loved and called to be caretakers of this unimaginable gift. In the beginning, God. Finally, I want to ask what these opening verses of the Bible mean for you and me more personally. When you hear the full poem in all its glory, you can sense that everything is building to the sixth day. So God created humankind in his image. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and multiply." There it is, the culmination of creation. God creates, in God's own image, conscious creatures to share the joy of existence. Here is the essence of this story, that the mystery behind all of reality, this wonder beyond all things, this ecstasy of being, decided to share the goodness of existence with humans, this unfathomable source who had utter freedom to live any way it chose to live, chose to create companions, people with the capacity to relate, to choose, to love, and alas, not to love. And when God saw this new creation, this creature, God declared not simply it is good, but it is very good. In short, the Genesis poem declares that creation, this universe, and you and I are not random accidents. God really wants us to know our freedom, our potency, our capacity to live and create and love and give. At the source of all existence, this poem declares, is an unimaginable generosity. God's desire was to share the gift of aliveness with this particular set of beings. And could it be that over the nearly 14 billion years since the Big Bang, this mysterious one has been working with the emerging physical universe to bring into being creatures who are conscious of their existence, possessing an interior space capable of receiving the presence of the unimaginable Creator. Might it be that we, offsprings of the stars, are nature's soul space, her heart, her vocal cords, as one writer put it? If so, it's probably true that this Creator has only begun. We human beings have only been around a few tens of thousands of years, which in the scale of things is like yesterday. Just read the news, we have a long way to go in developing the inwardness that can hold the presence of our Maker. In us, the universe is becoming self-aware. What a joy, but what a responsibility. So we're called to lives of gratitude and love and service and reconciliation as we, in this small little human race, try to learn to be worthy of the gift of consciousness and awareness we've been given. A final word. This story of creation is about you. You. God has created each of us out of nothingness. And that means that your life is intended. God chose for you to be. God wants you here on this earth for this handful of years any of us gets to live. So every breath is a sacrament, a gift of life flowing from God into our beings. At the end of today, when you make your way home, after, I hope, a full day of church, I hope you will carry with you one simple fact. You are sons and daughters of an everlasting love. Out of an incredible generosity, you have been called out of nothing into being. God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And we are called to be children, people of that light. In the beginning, God.